Hey, this is Dave from MetalEpidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review.
Over and out, you call me, I'm not afraid. Over and out, you call me.
What is up, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, joined by my man Duncan. We are back for a new album review, and for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Australian metal band 12 Foot Ninja. The band's new album, Vengeance, will be released on October 15th via Volkanik. So, this is the band's third full-length album, but it's a little more than just an album. Also sees the band release a comic, which is out now, written by guitarist, producer Stevic, I don't know.
Scottish. We're Scottish.
We're Scottish.
Don't hate us.
Stevic. I'm going to go Stevic. By artworks by George Evangelista. Also, a high fantasy novel called The Wyvern and the Wolf, which was initially inspired by the original concept of the 12 Foot Ninja by guitarist Stevic and his partner Fiona Permazel. It will be available at the band's website when the album is released. Also, a multi-level 2D platformer video game, again created by Stevic. The band released the video for their first single, Long Way Home, via a video game entitled Uncle Brusnik's Long Way Home. And fans who collected all 12 brick phones discovered they could unlock the band's first music video, Long Way Home. The band didn't provide any hints about the single, about the launch, and simply just kind of let fans discover it for themselves. So certainly creating a ton of content, even though it's been like 5 years since the last album, Outlier. And I actually cannot believe it's like 2012 since Silent Machine came out. That is just blowing my mind right now.
That's the first incarnation of us doing music reviews. I remember when that debut album dropped and listening to it and just being like, who the fuck are these guys? And this is absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's weird to think that we're in 2021 and this is them only reaching their third album. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm actually quite glad, and you'll hear for why when we get into the review. I think their release cycle and breaks in between albums actually aid them quite a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Rather than, like every second year there's a new 12 Foot Ninja album, which I imagine if you're a fan of the band, you completely disagree and tell me to fuck up.
Yes.
That's fine.
That's fine. I think it's safe to say that 12 Foot Ninja have always been a band that have had a bit of kind of quirkiness about them. They have a fairly progressive metal sound, at their core, but they were never afraid to throw in a reggae groove or something with a bit of Latin flair or fucking some flamenco guitar, or something Middle Eastern or something like that.
I always kind of classed them as a heavier, much more commercial dog fashion disco. You know what I mean? And they play and experiment in all the same weird kind of genres. The amalgamated genres, whether it's almost a Cuban flamenco or something like all these things that are brought in. But whereas dog fashion disco do it purely for quirk, and kind of go down that Mr. Bungle sort of road. 12 Foot Ninja, the way they incorporate it, it's just a highly polished version of it. If 12 Foot Ninja tomorrow decided that they wanted to release a merengue album, they probably, musically, they could fucking nail it. Could do it with ease. But the fact that it just might be one element that they bring to one particular version of a verse and one song is enough for them. You know what I mean? They're just here, we can play it this way or we can play it this way. And that's actually more difficult to do. I don't know if people understand it. It's actually more difficult to take a written piece of music in one genre and transpose it into a completely different genre, but retain the elements that are in the metal genre, for example, but make it sound authentic to the new genre you're putting in. It just fucking blows it. And they always made it sound entirely organic, as if the song was always supposed to sound this way,
Yeah.
dummy.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
Yeah, they've always mixed like a few surprises into their albums, and it kind of almost like separated them from the kind of sea of progressive metal bands out there.
Yeah.
And I think they did that on both of their previous albums. I preferred Silent Machine personally. I think it just for me it had better hooks in my opinion. Outlier was probably better produced. It sounded more polished.
Yeah, it was much
bigger
better.
sound.
Yeah, had some more. There was more Djent elements. On
Yeah,
that,
a little bit.
on that
Yeah,
second album for sure as well, which wasn't a bad thing, but it certainly made it sound a bit more polished, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
And I think that like comes from a productional point of view as well. Whereas
Yeah.
that first release, there's something a bit dangerous about that first album.
yeah. But I was interested to hear what like 12 Foot Ninja would sound like in 2021, like 5 years since their last album, and once again. They've put together another release that's really varied and different sounding to the last two releases. It's still very much 12 Foot Ninja at its core, but firstly, it kind of sounds like the whole kind of video game idea or concept has followed through into the album.
100%.
There is a huge increase in 80s synth sounds, retro video game sounds, and electronics on this album. And that kind of motif has kind of embedded itself in the album the whole way through. It's not something they just kind of toy with on a couple of tracks and then forget about it. It reappears in like various forms throughout this release, and I kind of like that. Sometimes they'll flirt with different styles on previous albums, as we mentioned, and they'll appear once or twice throughout the album. Whereas this feels like more of a conscious decision to have it as a kind of main feature of the album.
It's conceptual all the way through it, and that in a weird way ties everything back together.
Yeah, definitely. But it also feels like it's not a quirk. This album feels like an album full of actual songs. They've obviously had like songs in the past, in their past two albums. Don't get me wrong, but there were tracks that felt they were more kind of built around a particular riff rather than the overall kind of structure and makeup of the track. And this album still has riffs, and I mean huge, filthy riffs. But they almost feel better placed, and I think they stand out more because of that kind of extra focus they've put into building these songs. I feel like the arrangements on these songs feel more thought out. Maybe like a little bit more conventional in places, but I think you can hear a distinct change in the quality of the songwriting on this album.
I think there's once again, I hate using this word. There's a maturity on the album.
It got matured, yeah.
Yeah, there's a mature, like when you're younger, you want to do everything. You want to show everyone everything that you can do.
Yeah,
like, and that's evident on that first album. It's certainly it's kind of more polished.
Yeah.
On the second album, but there's almost by this album, they're like, we've got this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like comfortably let this whole entire song be a metal-driven song, led with the guitar work and the vocals, which have always been the thing that 12 Foot Ninja have had as their secret weapon in everything they do. Their vocalist has huge fucking range, huge range. He can do it all, which like he hits a note in the opening track, Start the Fire. It's like when it hits the word fire with a scream, he does a total scream for like it's the same note he hits to the very last time he hits fire, where he goes up a level again, and how he does that. I swear to God, I got shivers when I heard it the first time, because I was just used to hitting that one, going, "Oh, that's fucking listen to that," and then he goes up a tone again, and I swear to God, it's just, and his aggressive vocals are the best they've ever sounded, but his melody is the most confident it's ever sounded. Like this is fucking ripping out with catchy vocal hooks and melodies. But I think this is his most aggressive album, and I'm doing the thing I hate again. This is their most melodic and most aggressive album they've ever. Like, it's such a cliche, but it is here. The balance is fucking spot on.
Yep, definitely. And the lengths of these tracks are perfect. Like, none of them overstay their welcome. I think the longest track on this is like 4 4 minutes.
The opening song.
Just over 4 minutes. So it feels like every track feels like they've kind of been cut of any like excess fat. They just kind of get in, they do the business, and then they move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And even though the tracks have this kind of like video game theme flowing through them, they still manage to give you like an album full of individual sounding tracks.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't sound like the same thing over and over again. It doesn't become repetitive or make you feel like, have I heard this song already? I didn't get into that at all. The album is varied in tempo and rhythm. You know, there's loads of different time signatures throughout. And there's also like the use of different instruments. You know, there's the first track's got some kind of Tibetan kind of weird instrument on the opening track, and then they go a bit more kind of orchestral on Long Way Home. But I love the fact these guys they're not afraid to take a risk.
Yeah.
You know, like tracks like Vengeance, where they go down a far more like synth heavy route with the addition of like vocoders and industrial elements. Like, it's still got the big 12-foot ninja riffs and grooves, but the makeup of the track is like a bit of a departure for the band, you know. I thought it was brilliant. I really loved that track. I loved IDK. I thought that track was an absolute home run. The main riff is massive, you know, it's thick and groovy, but those like funky, like 80s inspired verses were genius, absolute genius. Like when I was listening, I was thinking, this is like fucking Incubus meets Wham. It was like this, like this shouldn't work, but it totally does. Like
it's like the sort of
amazing.
music you could, like, on some level, it's the sort of music you could imagine the Karate Kid training to. You know what I mean? It's it's fucking brilliant.
Yeah. And then you've got like Shock to the System. You know, it starts off like something from a Daft Punk album. So like, although you've got like the usual 12-foot ninja traits, there's also a lot in here that's really fresh and different. I think another thing that they've nailed on this, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, the choruses on this album. So many catchy, feel-good moments on this.
It's an amazing.
Oh, wow.
We've spoken about this God knows how many times. To write a song that's catchy, is difficult, right?
Yep.
Like to write that earworm that gets hooked in there, and that's you, is difficult. To have an album of them,
yeah.
in this
Absolutely.
genre, whilst doing everything else they're doing musically.
Packed,
I have always said he's the secret weapon for this band, because musically they're fucking talented. They're really, really talented. It'd be so easy to throw just a one-dimensional vocalist in here, and just but he has all these different facets that he can do, and he just, once again, when you transition into those different styles. Maybe less on this album, because like you see, it's kind of weirdly a more conventional approach to how they structure the songs, so they're not throwing any fucking like ballroom kind of tango style section out of nowhere. There's none of that in here. But his voice, like in the past, his voice fit that as well. So like he's a very versatile voice, but the way he hooks a melody to what the songs are doing is it's just next level. It really is next level. It's what makes them instantly recognizable, but instantly entertaining and commercial. Like, I've always thought 12-foot ninja should be much bigger than they are. Like, they should be fucking huge. And it just feels like the world hasn't quite caught on to them yet, and I don't know why that is, because on paper everything they do is immaculate.
I think I agree with you. I think this is probably the best that Nick has ever sounded on 12-foot ninja albums. Like the two tracks that kind of stood out for me were Gone and Over and Out. I thought like vocally were just fantastic. Almost kind of like verging on kind of pop melodies, but just get stuck in your head for days. Absolutely loved it. Overall, I thought this was a really strong return from 12-foot ninja. I think it could be their most consistent album, and probably their most kind of cohesive sounding album to date. There were very few moments where they kind of dropped the ball on this album. You know, stylistically, you'll have heard ideas like this blended before, but I don't know if you'll ever heard it done as well as this, because it is just, it's absolutely immaculate, and with a runtime of 35 minutes. This is an album that 100% you will play again once it's finished. I guarantee you that. As soon as this is over, you'll be like, yep, let's stick that back on again. It's one of those albums, 35 minutes. It's so easy to listen to, and it's so hook laden. Like there's so many tracks that will just get stuck in your head. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I had a good time with this album. What about yourself? What did you make of the rest of this?
Yeah, to kind of circle back on something I said earlier on, 12 Foot Ninja leave space between their albums, and I think that's necessary to appreciate what they do. I think if they were doing an album every 2 years, the gimmick that they have, the shtick that they use of we're the band that can meld all these different styles and different ideas into our songs, it would become a bit tiresome. The gimmick would be seen. I think you need that gap in between it, that you almost get to the point where you start to forget what 12 Foot Ninja are about, and then they drop a new album and then you're like, oh my god. That's one of their benefits, I think, overall, and just the release schedule. Yes, as a selfish fan, I would love new material from them all the fucking time.
Yeah.
But they don't do that, and like I say, it works for them. The fact that they've kind of taken on this kind of video game concept idea as a kind of conceptual point of view on the themes of the album, I think works. It once again makes them sound different from what they're doing. It is sadly a trend right now with quite a lot of bands that are doing the kind of like the font for the album, the idea of these 80s video game sounds, or 80s kind of just in general, there's a nostalgia for the 80s which I would have thought would have died out by now, but appears to only be getting stronger. But it doesn't sound cynical on their one, like they're trying to tap into something that'll make them sell more albums, and knowing what these guys are like, how they've done their music before, it clearly isn't the case. I'm with you. I think as a kind of through line, there's always a 12 Foot Ninja song or two on the previous albums, which I'm like, all right, we'll just get through this one because then it picks up after it. This one doesn't have that. The album flows really, really well, and the fact that they have those sims that kind of link things and works. It feels like a soundtrack written for, at times, a arcade machine, which I know that's what they're aiming for, and it sounds like the concept works. It fits back in. I've mentioned that I think vocally this is his best album. I think it's like stunning, flawless. Production is flawless. And out with like one or two songs which maybe aren't as strong as the some of the rest of the album, and they're not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I wasn't the biggest fan of Culture War. I think Culture War's fine for what it is, but it kind of feels like a weak point on the album. But then it's followed by Over and Out, which has Tatiana doing guest vocals on, and she's an amazing range, and her doing vocals off him. Like he could go and do anything and he'd be fucking fine. But Gone, which comes in before Culture War as well, is a great track. So it's like there's one or two songs where I'm just like, it's maybe not as strong as the rest of the album, but they're doing stuff that really works. Same as you, Vengeance is the one that is the biggest step away from what they would usually do. Weirdly enough, it's the one that works like as flawless. Like I've heard bands experiment with different stylings and different trappings, but they throw everything at this one. And once again, surprise, surprise, 12 Foot Ninja nail it. So they want to do a whole album with that. They probably could as well. A very, very, very talented group of musicians that make everything they do sound very fucking easy. Where, like I said before, if you have ever written music, or you understand just how to compose music or record music, what they make sound very easy is very difficult, which gives me just a greater appreciation for them. I know they are touring next year in the UK, and I am determined that I will be there to see them. I think they'd be bitching live, and I want to see if they bring the whole concept to this with them. This is the sort of album they could just play in its entirety and you'd be happy. 35-minute set, they could play it front to back and walk off stage, and I'd be like smiling ear to ear without necessarily sitting there going, oh, I can't believe they didn't play Invincible or something like that, or Mother Sky. It's a great fucking album by a great fucking band, and 2021 needed a dose of, like I said before, like we've got so many bands releasing so much COVID written music, which is all fucking glum and angry and pissed off, and 12 Foot Ninja come across with a spring in their step and a smile on their face, and it's difficult not to smile along with them. It's a great
True.
fucking album.
True. And I think like a shout out needs to go to Stevik, the guitarist. Like,
Who
not
has the
only
time?
he's obviously creating all this amazing content, but then the riffs on this album are fucking unbelievable.
So good, man.
Unbelievable.
So good. Like there's a bendiness about some of the things he
Oh,
does.
wow.
Like gives me a smile. You know what I mean? Like a wee bit of bendy, Dave.
I love it. Okay, so 12 Foot Ninja, Vengeance. What we're thinking rating wise on this one. I find it really difficult to pick like anything, like pick flaws in this at all. I mean, there's a couple of wee moments here and there that, you know, maybe aren't quite as strong as the rest of the album. But that aside, I mean, it's a pretty fucking bitchin' album, and as you said, the production just kind of elevates the whole sound as well. It sounds huge. I'm going to go 4.5 on this one. It's a really strong album. Really enjoyed this. What about yourself?
Reunited and it feels so good. Yep, 4.5. I mean, it really is just like, this is the, like you said, 35 minutes. That's fuck all. It's fuck all time. But they pack so much stuff into 35 minutes that bands could take 3 albums worth to try and explore, and they do it as if it was always meant to be. Like every single song here sounds like, of course this was all. I mean, this is how you write music, isn't it? And yes, I want all music to be written this way. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
You know, this is another one that I will go back to again and again and again. It just makes me feel fucking happy when I'm listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is worth its weight in gold. Don't even know if I would. Is it the best album? I'm thinking about this.
I think it might be.
I like the first album has like 1 or 2 tracks where I'm like, it's maybe one step too far.
Yeah.
I don't think the one step too far is here, and there's a couple of tracks which I don't necessarily think as strong as the rest. But I think the balance of what they're aiming for conceptually with what they've delivered is as complete as it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say, like, if you're a fan, I think this might be their most accomplished work.
Yeah.
Whilst maybe not being the most diverse thing they've ever released, I think they found the balance between, like we said, the idea of work, the idea of experimentation, and the idea of song is probably the most in sync it's ever been. So, yeah.
Songwriting's fantastic. So this one drops on October 15th. If you want to check out the band, I will put links below to their Facebook page and to the pre-order for the album as well, so you can check it out. Check this one out when it drops. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts on it. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.